Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm Simon at Savageries and today it's a crime time with an extra special twist. See what I did there? Nice, thank you. Because we've got Pip, as always, and we've got Clare Mackintosh. So, that's the twist. And also, we've got Clare's new book. So if you watched the last video we did, we said we were reading The Dry next. We lied.
We did lie.
That was another twist.
Wow.
Because we read this instead.
It's just plot twist after plot twist with
I
you
know,
guys.
it's too much, it's too much.
It really is.
So, we thought we'd have a chat with Clare about her books because we love them and we've loved this one as much. We haven't read the one in the middle though, Clare, we're very sorry.
That's okay.
We're very bad
You don't have to.
students.
It's not compulsory.
Well,
We
it
want
might
to.
be. We do want to.
Okay, in
We
which
do
case
want
it is,
to.
and I will mark you down for it.
We've only got a
At least
C.
we were honest.
Yeah, this is nice. Now this, would you like to kind of, it's really difficult to talk about your books, thank you, because of the twist.
It is
So
really
much to
hard.
talk about.
It is hard. So it's so Let Me Lie is a standalone psychological thriller, just like my other two. No returning characters. It is partly narrated by Anna, who's a new mum. She's got an 8-week-old baby, and we join Anna on the anniversary of her mum's death. So Anna is coming to terms with the fact that the year before our story starts, both her parents took their own lives at Beachy Head. And so on the anniversary of her mum's death, she receives an anonymous note which casts doubt over her mum's death. And for Anna, who has always believed that her parents were murdered, has never felt comfortable with the fact that they would take their own lives, she seizes on this as confirmation of what she's always believed. And so she goes to the police station to find somebody who will reopen this case. And the person she finds is Murray Mackenzie, who
I love.
I love
Both
so
absolutely
much.
love.
My favourite character ever, and the only character I've ever written who may well persuade me into writing a returning character. And so Murray is a retired detective. He's done 30 years in the police, and as lots of police officers do, retired young and then came back to work as a civilian. So he's working at the front counter at Anna's local police station. And so he starts to look into this case, but they very quickly discover that they should have let it lie.
Nice place
Yeah.
to leave it.
Yeah, there's a nice place to leave it.
Yeah.
But if you've seen our video where we talk about I Let You Go, this is as twisty, if I not think
It is.
twistier.
It is slightly twistier. It's also, in some ways, better, I think.
I love them both.
That's a bold thing. But I think, and maybe this isn't a discussion for here, but I think we could probably have a chat about the twists at the end of I Let You Go, which are a little bit contentious, whereas the twists in Let Me Lie, I think, are perhaps a little bit more, I don't know, I can't really talk about it without spoiling it.
No spoilers.
That's not for now.
Maybe it's just the thing that you just like your most recent book the best. Maybe it's
yeah.
like that actually.
Is that how you felt about book 2?
I did feel book 2 was stronger in some ways. I think the thing is, it's like starting a new job, isn't it? And you don't really know what you're doing at the
Yeah,
start.
of course.
And we should get better at our jobs
As you go.
as we go. And if we don't, then
Pip's worked with me,
if
she
we
knows
don't,
I don't.
then there's probably something wrong with that, isn't there? Because
Yeah.
we should constantly be challenging ourselves. And so I kind of, it's a bit like if I'd been training to do Ironman competitions.
I have.
Then I should be getting fitter and stronger and pushing
Yeah, of course,
myself to go. So I hope that actually each of my books is stronger in some way. It's always going to be down to personal choice.
Speaking about jobs though, do you think your job before this has really, really kind of affected how you write and what you write? Because we were saying, weren't we?
Yeah, we
Sometimes with police procedurals, it gets to the police people like, oh.
It's quite
And it's not the case in these.
It's
You're
not,
really,
yeah.
really interested.
You mean my job as a professional
Yeah.
baker?
No, not that one. The other
Not
one.
that
When I was baking
I really
regularly.
wanted to derail your entire interview right then, when I was an ice skater.
So before the ice skating and before the baking.
Yeah, the
that
one before.
one.
So the thing about having been a police officer is that it's useful in a way that I don't think is obvious. Okay, so a lot of people say, oh, you must have loads of real life cases that you can write about, and that's not how it's useful. Or they think, well, you can write authentically about procedure and forensics, and to a certain extent that's true. But the most useful thing that my career gave me was 12 years experience in understanding how people work, meeting people from all walks of life that I would never have encountered otherwise in my safe little white middle class bubble that I grew up in. And it taught me how to find the story, and it taught me about how we have everyone has a different perception of the truth. And so every single witness to a crime will give a slightly different account. When a victim tells you what's happened to them, they don't start at the beginning, they start at the end. If someone's been stalked for 3 years and then attacked, the attack is what they're going to tell you, and what you've got to do as a detective is unravel all the way back and find out what was that inciting incident, what was the thing that started it all off. Which is exactly how you write a book. And so when by the time a case gets to court, what you're doing is presenting. It's a book, it's a collection of woven narratives of lots of different people, the story that the forensics told and the cameras and the witnesses, and you're presenting it in such a way that a judge or a magistrate understands not just what has happened, but what's been the impact and why did it happen, and it's a story.
And it's interesting you mention that as well, because like with what I think, and I said this in the previous video we were talking about, that you are very generous in the fact that you let the reader play detective, and your suspicion is shifted. The same in this one. We were talking about there's one character, and again we can't spoil it, but there's one character that we both thought did it and then didn't.
Yeah, we were really sure.
But we did.
I want to know who that is, because I want to know if it's the character that in the first draft was going to be the person who did it.
Well, we want to know that as well.
But no, but it is. It's really generous because you go off. But it's your suspicion that goes off, and you don't at any point feel like you've been played.
Why I feel like I have to do that is because readers are too good. They're too clever. And so it used to be, I think, in a lot of older detective novels, that the person the baddie would be the person you least suspected. And you can't do that now, because it becomes very obvious to people that, I don't suspect him at all, it must be him. And so actually what you have to do is you've got to cast suspicion over everybody. Which is a very Poirot way of doing it. The kind of every single person in a Poirot has a motive, has the opportunity to have killed this person. And so what you're doing is you're just sort of spotlighting each person in turn. And I love it as a book to read, and so I think it follows that I'm going to write those books as well.
Well, you were thinking you wanted to ask Clare about...
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit, obviously, because all of your books that we've read are so twisty. Is it something that you know from the offset what your twists are going to be and you start writing, or has there ever been a time when you started writing and thought, actually, and which actually you just touched on there?
I tend to know, I don't necessarily know who the baddie is, but then that's not really the twist. That's not a twist, that's a reveal. So I don't necessarily know what the reveals are going to be. They might change because during the course of the first draft my characters will take shape and they won't necessarily want to do what I've planned out. But the twists, and a twist is very much a change in perception, isn't it? It's something that the rug is pulled beneath your feet and suddenly you've got to view things in a different way. So generally I know what those are, and certainly with I Let You Go and Let Me Lie, which are much more similar than I See You. I See You is a slightly different structure. I knew one of the twists in each. I knew the first major twist that would happen in each of those books, and then the other ones evolved slightly later on.
And with characters, are you precious about them at all, or are you happy to make them go through absolutely the worst that they can? Because in a lot of cases they do.
Yeah, it's mean, isn't it? It's mean. But that's what you're supposed to do, isn't it? With you're supposed to, and I'm sure it's attributed to someone famous that I now can't remember. But you're supposed to put your characters up a tree and then throw rocks at them.
Is it like the kill your darling sort of thing as well? They're your darling in one way, but you can't not literally kill them.
Well, sometimes you do. That is the narrative structure of a book, isn't it? Is give someone a massive conflict and see how they get out of it. And what really interests me in life, it interests me in the police, and interests me in fiction, is how ordinary people cope with these extraordinary situations. And so ordinary people are far more interesting to me than spies or special agents, because ordinary people have got the odds stacked against them. So you don't know whether they're going to win. And I think in real life, a lot of us think that perhaps we're quite weak, that we wouldn't be able to deal with conflict if it happened, or with a terrible situation. And the reality is that we do. We suddenly, if we're threatened or our loved ones are threatened, we find these enormous reserves of strength that we didn't know we had. And for me, that's the territory that's most rich to explore.
Is that why you chose to do crime? Because Val McDermott once said the most interesting thing for her with crime and murders is what it does, is the pressure cooker that it puts on normal people.
Yeah.
And actually it shows people at their most extreme, but also at their most vulnerable.
Yeah, absolutely. And seeing, having spent time with people that have just been a victim of crime, or even people that have just committed a crime, because of course people have so many different reasons for committing crime. It sounds odd to say it, but there's a sort of an honesty to them. They might be lying to you, but there's a sort of an honesty to their emotions that you don't normally see, because it's normally protected with that kind of facade that we all have. So that interests me. And then what really fascinates me is that grey area between right and wrong, because I don't think I've ever sat in an interview room with a criminal and felt that they are pure evil through and through, have always been evil, there's always been either some redeeming feature or some reason why they've ended up like that. And equally, I've never met anyone that's, completely angelic, except for you.
Well, Pip more so. Look at that, Pip instantly. It's me only angelic.
And so that, I think that's really interesting, because what would make you cross over from good to bad, or vice versa? Because I think we're all capable of it. I think we're, all three of us would commit murder if we were in a situation that, are you going to deny that?
No, I was going to say, is it wrong to have actually occasionally wondered how you could get away with it?
I think it's perfectly normal.
Okay, that makes me feel better.
You haven't Googled it though, have you?
No.
Never leave a trace.
Not good on your search history, that one.
But also, we were talking about sort of the fact that you like to pick up on quite important social mores, don't you, and issues. Because we were talking about how in I Let You Go, it's all about domestic abuse, and then this one is suicide. Is that something that you find crime is really good for talking about, the social, what's going on?
Yeah, I think it is, and maybe that's because so many of these social issues are what cause crime. That actually, if you've been touched by abuse or poverty or whatever, trauma, that's somebody at the door.
Oh, there is.
So it does really interest me, and whether that's because it's those social aspects that often cause people to commit crime, or just that it's interesting to see how different people behave in different situations.
Which you certainly do in this book, which is a nice way to round it off.
It is.
But we loved this one as much as the first one. Now we're going to go and read the second one. So
I can't wait.
thank you so much for coming on a crime time.
Thank you.
A little bit of test of crime time. It was quite exciting.
It was just
Hopefully it was criminally good. Oh, it's all going right.